Welcome back to 13C. If you've seen this setup before, this is the IWI Masada pistol that was out in the first video, and we also had the RMR2 here from Trijicon, which is what this video is going to focus in on. This is the RMR2 HRS. The full model number is the RM06-HRS. And then we also had a video out that's going to be in the middle of these two on the night sights that we replaced here, these suppressed height night sights from Night Vision. So in total, this what you see here, the gun itself has seen about 2,500 rounds at this point. The Optic on here has seen about 2,300 of those rounds, because the first 200 rounds we put through here before we put the Optic on it, just for function checking before we started adding weight to the slide. Anything else just to make sure it was going to run without it. And then after that first video that you saw is when we put on these Night Vision sights. So that's where we are on that. We've done a number of testing on both the gun, the Optic as well. Even as we were doing some of the barricade testing on this, we accidentally rammed it into our Night Vision front sight post here, at least once for sure, and caught that on video. That was pretty funny. Punch it with the front sight. They're still rocking strong. So we're going to go through this kind of step by step and focusing in mostly on the Optic itself here today. Now, we talked about the plate in the first video. This is a it's mounting plate, but really in my opinion it's more of a positioning plate. We talked about that in the first video. It is polymer. It's a plastic plate here. It's turned out to be a non-issue, zero concerns with it. The screws go through that plastic and mount directly into the steel slide here of this handgun. So you're not dealing with any of... it's not like you're mounting to a plastic plate and then mounting the plastic plate on there. It's different than like an MOS system or something like that. I actually think this is a pretty cool system. And one of the ways that we tested that in that first video is we did this. Yeah. No issues whatsoever, and we've continued to beat on this thing, doing some work with some barricades. Again, no issues there either. This thing is a beast, and arguably the RMR2 is the top dog when it comes to durability as far as pistol mounted red dots go. Aaron Cohen is a great guy with Sage Dynamics, and he does tons of videos on these things, does a burn down test. He puts these optics through hell. Really cool videos to check out if you want to see just what kind of abuse this thing will take. Anyway, it's similar to previous RMRs. The HRS is, this version is what was adopted by SOCOM, U.S. Military Special Forces Group, and it is substantially similar to the SOCOM version. As far as I know, a lot of people say it is. Technically, the verbiage is it's substantially similar, virtually identical, slight difference. What that difference is, I could not tell you. The markings are the same, all the ratings appear to be the same. I don't know, but apparently there's some sort of super squirrel secret technique or something with the actual SOCOM version. I have no idea. In any event, this is pretty much as close as you're going to get to it, and it's held up extremely well thus far. So you've got 4 modes on here. You've got off, you've got manual, automatic, and lockout. So lockout is, as it would say, when you turn it on, you actually turn it on into lockout mode, which means that it will lock it out and you cannot adjust any of the settings by bouncing around, touching any of these buttons. You actually have to push and diligently turn to get it out of lockout mode, which is nice to have that feature. That way, if you're running a bunch of gear and it's bumping up against it and you don't want that to change at all, you're good there. The automatic mode on this is actually, so we're getting into some pluses and some minuses on how I feel on this Optic. One of the big pluses I want to talk about is the automatic mode on this. This has one of the better automatic modes that I've seen on any of these pistol mounted red dots. It's done extremely well. There are some that have an extremely difficult time transitioning from light to dark. They also have a hard time picking up when you're in darkness, shooting out into a lighter environment. Now, yes, some of these things are just simple science. You can't overcome some of these things, but this seems to do the best out of any of them that I've seen, which surprises me the most, because most of that sensor is more contained inside the body here and much less obvious externally. So I think that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty neat. I think they nail it out of the park on that. It's got a couple night vision sights, and one of the beautiful things about this is that I've really dogged on other sites about in the past is that when you want to take it out of automatic mode, all you have to do is push the plus button and it's going to bump the brightness up. I love that. There's no pushing and holding, just push it once, boom, as many times as you need to, to bump your brightness up. You're there. I love that, and I can't stress enough how important that is on a self-defense optic, to not overlook that option. If you need to bump the brightness up in a stress situation, you can't be pushing and holding this, counting 1, 2, 3. It's ridiculous, and I think that is a major flaw in some of the other optics out there that really should run in close to in contention with this. That really drags them down. So kudos for Trijicon for getting that right. At the same time, when you're looking at the window and looking through here, it is a slightly smaller window. Now, part of that is the design for these ears. It's one of the reasons why this optic is so rugged and reliable and does so well, is how this thing is made. This is a proprietary form here for like these owl horn kind of ears on here. When you drop this thing, the impact hits here on the corners and translates straight through down the mount, rather than translating into the glass itself. That's why it's so much more durable, can handle a lot more stress than a lot of other optics. Again, you've got that drawback. No matter what pistol mounted red dot you're going to have, there's going to be a learning curve. Now think to yourself, you've been shooting a handgun for a long time with iron sights. How many times did you practice pressing out, right? Picking up that front sight post. How many times did you go through all those repetitions? You're going to need to put repetitions in. Most people anyway, and especially for me, I did not just pick this up and go, oh, there's the dot the first time. You put it out there, you're kind of looking around, you're like, what's going on? You're moving your head, you're moving the optic. You need to get into a good habit and practice with this before you're going to carry it, this or any pistol mounted red dot optic. Get in a habit, learn it, ingrain it just like you did all your other shooting fundamentals as you were coming up through the years, and you're not going to have that big of an issue with it. That said, it is a slightly smaller window, so especially if you're learning, it's going to take you a little bit longer to pick up, and it's going to take you a little bit longer to master, in my opinion. I mean, there's plenty of people out there who are just savants using these RMR2s, and they're hitting the dot every single time insanely fast. That comes with time and practice, and of course, for some of those folks out there, we're not going to hit that level, but you can get just as proficient with this dot as you can with iron sights, and eventually you will overcome that and become much faster. With any of these dots, we're going to make a standalone video talking about our experiences over the past year with several of these different dots, and the improved accuracy by using a red dot over iron sights for hitting targets at distance cannot be overstated. It is, this is going to be the first time I'll actually use it in a video. The advent of pistol mounted red dots has been a game changer for accuracy at long distances. You can consistently hit 50-yard man-sized targets all day long with this, with a red dot. And I know for me, using iron sights on that, I've got to focus like crazy to consistently hit those shots at 50 yards. And even then, I'm still going to be dropping and missing shots at 50 yards. With this red dot, it just takes all that work out of. You can concentrate on your trigger press. You don't have to worry about lining up all these different things. You just get your dot on target, press that trigger, and you're there. We'll cover that in another video though. Your battery life on this is technically rated at 35,000 hours, which is going to be roughly 4 years. And that is at a setting of 4 out of 8. Now, the optic itself, if you're using it in manual mode, this has a automatic switching to automatic mode feature, which means that after 16.5 hours of not touching a button on here, if you're in manual mode, it will switch to automatic. And the point there being that, you take your gear off at the end of the day, whatever else you sit on your nightstand at night, it's going to wind up turning itself down to a lower brightness, at least for a little while. When you wake up, you pick it up in the morning, you go to holster it, whatever, you push one button, and it'll put it right back into manual mode where the brightness was before. It's a battery saving feature. I talked about how much I like the automatic mode on this anyway, so for me, using that manual feature is probably not going to happen very often at all. The ability to be able to push the side button on here, automatically bump it up to your manual mode, that's where it's at. So I don't really necessarily have any concerns about carrying this one on automatic mode, whereas some other ones I would. There's a coating on the front of this lens. It's a proprietary coating that aids in certain environments. I do think there's a little bit of color and a little bit of distortion that I'm not exactly a fan of. At the same time, I've seen significantly worse coatings on some other optics. I've seen way better ones, but I've definitely seen some worse ones. Now at the same time, I've seen some coatings that, with this one, like the sun's going down in the sky now, if you've got the sun coming down at an angle, this coating does a great job of reducing lens flare, which is huge. Some of those other ones that are much clearer or crisper, if you will, you get into that low light sun situation and the flare on it is horrible. So again, these are pluses and minuses. You need to weigh the benefits of what you do and don't want, and I'm getting off track again. We'll save that for another video. The weight on this optic is going to come in at 1.2 ounces, and that is with the battery. To change out the battery, you got to take this off and install the battery from underneath it. Speaking of which, where this thing is off, there is a plate Trijicon sells, a tiny little thin, wafer thin piece of metal that is their sealing plate. In order for this to get its 20 meter water rating, 66 feet roughly, in order for it to get that water rating, you have to use the sealing plate. It doesn't include one, so make sure you pick one up. We'll put some links down below where you can grab one of those if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about. Even if you're not planning on submerging this thing in water at all, pick up a sealing plate, put it under there. That way at least you're going to seal out any grime, dirt, muck, oil, anything from getting underneath there, because when you look at it from underneath, that's all open down there. You need something to seal this thing off, and that rubber gasket around there is really thin and flat. It will, unless it's a perfectly thin, flat, not thin, but perfectly flat piece of metal you're butting it up against, you could get some sort of issues there. So pick up the sealing plate. Don't buy yourself any trouble. Do yourself a favor, and if you ever do have an issue with water ingress into this and Trijicon asks you, well, did you use a sealing plate, you can say yes. Speaking of which, Trijicon, if you're watching, include the stupid plate. $739 MSRP for this. You can include a 5-cent plate. It's not the cost of the plate at that point that bothers me, it's the fact that you have to go out and get one separately that bothers me. You know, I don't understand that type of thing. If you're going to advertise an optic, water rated, include the plate. It's just common sense. Anyway, I'm not going to beat that horse to death. In any event, I don't think I mentioned it before, the LED, the dot on here is 3.25 MOA, which for a handgun is a pretty decent dot size. For most rifle applications, I prefer a 2 MOA dot as the biggest dot I would ever want on one of those, unless it's got an outer ring. You know, the outer ring helps, but that center dot I want to be 2 MOA. 2 MOA for a pistol is not necessarily always as quick and easy to pick up at distance. At the same time, 3.25 is probably the highest I would ever want to go on any of these dots. They make bigger ones if you're into it. You know, you can get a 6 or 7 MOA dot if you want, but personal preference would be 3.25 is going to be as big as I would want on a handgun. I think that that allows you really quick and easy to pick up at 3.25. And also you're still small enough that you can be taking shots on a man-sized target, let's say a torso at 50 and 100 yards. That is one of the huge benefits of using a red dot, is your ability to be much more accurate at distance. It takes a hell of a lot of concentration for me to hit shots at 50 yards with iron sights. With a red dot, it's just so much easier, and I can consistently hit, with this setup, let's say 50-yard shots all day long, back to back to back to back, without having to worry, without having to stress myself too much. Trying to do that with iron sights for me is a struggle to consistently put those rounds on target at 50 yards. That's just me though. There's people who shoot way better than I do. And you know, it is technical specs. One click is one MOA here on your adjustments. And speaking of warranty wise, you've got a 5-year warranty on the electronics. That 5-year warranty though is from the date of manufacture, not from the date of purchase. So keep in mind, if you're buying one of these, you know, that's going to be, your warranty starts at the date of manufacture. For me, I got this in from our friends at Optics Planet. It was barely 1 month old when I got it. I got it back in May sometime. The manufacture date on here actually says April. So, you know, 4 to 6 weeks basically after this was manufactured, depending on when in April and when in May I got it, is how old it was when I got it. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Before we get into our closing thoughts, if you're digging this apparel, give a like down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're gonna have more videos on this. We're gonna have another video coming out talking about kind of an overview of all the different pistol mounted red dot optics we've done over the past year, thoughts and pros and cons kind of on each one, and compare and contrast to try and give you some more information to make a more informed decision, especially if you're dropping a lot of coin on something. Because we get a lot of questions about trying to compare this and that. And a lot of times it's apples and oranges. It's hard to do, but we're going to try and tackle this in an upcoming video. Probably going to be a month or two out. We'll see how that translates out. We're going to compile all your questions. So if you have optics questions, please leave them down below, and we'll get to those. And definitely please share and subscribe if you haven't already. Full 30 and Gunstreamer are great places to check out our content. And Patreon, we have a Patreon page. We have been completely demonetized. Before we were restricted on virtually everything. Now we have been completely removed from the YouTube partnership program. They terminated our partnership after like 5-6 years, just boom. It's not that we did anything against any of the rules that they can specifically point out. It's just they, for some reason, don't like our freedom and liberty minded content. Speaking of which, 13C Media channel, we're gonna have more political commentary there, still focusing in on freedom and liberty minded topics relating to the Constitution, and primarily still focused on a right to keep and bear arms issues. We're gonna have more of that over there, so check out that channel if you haven't already. We really appreciate it. And you know, if you're looking for a bomb-proof, as close to a bomb-proof optic anyway as possible, this is probably going to be you know, as good as you're gonna find. This thing is a tank. It's a beast, and not in weight. It's only 1.2 ounces. I think I mentioned that earlier. But as far as being durable, I mean, we beat the hell out of this thing. And I think it's also a testament, not just to the gun, not just to the mount, but to the optic and the mounting system itself here on this, how sturdy it's been. At the same time, with that durability comes a pretty steep MSRP at $739. This is not something you necessarily buy on an impulse purchase, which is probably why you're watching this video, because you want to learn some more about it and you know, see how it's done for us. Now, street price on this, you can find this close to about the $500 mark. You stack a coupon code on top of it, you can get this thing for just under 500 bucks, which puts it much more in the grasp for a lot more people, and puts it more in contention with some other options that are out there on the market as well, some competitors. And again, you know, some of these are apples and oranges. Some of them are as close to apples and apples as you can get. So again, we'll leave that for a different video. We'll leave some coupon codes down below and some different links if you want to check those out. Special thank you to Optics Planet for helping us out with this video and extending the coupon code Gun Reviews, which will get you 5% off the majority of stuff on their site. And you know, facebook.com/gun reviews. If you want to learn, you reach us there. And if you want to learn some more about this handgun, check out that first video. We'll put the link down below as well for that. We answer pretty much every single question about this and go into depth about this optics mounting system that's on here. Obviously, as you've seen, it's really sturdy, it's really rugged, but we answer some of those other more technical questions that you may have, and how this actually translates and functions in real life compared to some other mounting systems, because you know, there's a huge difference between this and, let's say, the MOS system, for example. Find some behind the scenes stuff. We put up a lot of pictures and whatnot, but also some behind the scenes stuff of you know, our daily life as well over on Instagram. We're at 13C Gun Reviews, and we have a Patreon as well. Of course, 13cgunreviews.com will get you links to any of the stuff that we talk about here, be it Facebook, Instagram, our other media channels such as over on Full 30 and Gunstreamer. Definitely check that out if you haven't already. We appreciate it. I don't know why I keep pointing up here, because YouTube's taken away most of our ability to put in cards and end screens and whatnot. We're very limited in what we can actually do with that now, so you'll have to look for those links down below. First comment down below that I'll pin will also have a lot of different links that we'll try and keep updated for some of the various stuff that we talk about here and on all of our videos. Thanks again, everybody. We really appreciate it, your continued support, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody at the next big event out there. We'll see you soon.